right, well, it looks like we haven't done this in a while, so we're going to have to do a little bit of some dusting off in terms of our what we have to remember. So I think the first thing we always have to cover is...
Why is John wearing those pants?
Because they go with his sneakers.
Online, when I looked to buy these pants, they didn't look like this. But out of sheer principle, I bought them, and it's more expensive to send them back.
Wait,
because
when you say they didn't look like that, were they like a darker blue? Were they less tight? Were they age appropriate for a 45-year-old man? What were they?
As a young man, heard the sky's the limit. First thing first, I'ma break through the ceiling. One life jam, but it feels infinite. One life damn, then I better go get it.
This podcast is being brought to you by the Reyes Group at IA Private Wealth. That is made up of myself, John Reyes, a wealth advisor, and Jillian Seguin, an associate wealth advisor. Welcome to a BEARable conversation with John Reyes, wealth advisor.
And Jillian Seguin, associate wealth advisor at Reyes Group. The man in the pants. Okay.
You would like to believe that we do this as a stage thing to make everybody laugh, but the reality is I bought these pants and it's too expensive to return them, and out of sheer principle, I'm wearing them.
Okay.
I'm not even going to say where they're from because I don't even want to give them any credit.
I think that...
And it's not Temu.
This is very appropriate for the topic today. The topic today is think different, get better. And we're going to make it really pertaining to the financial world because it doesn't always pan out that way when you think different.
Pan out, is that a play on words there, Jill? Pan out? Yeah, you laugh at your own jokes.
Okay, we're done.
Okay, it's been a while since we've done this.
Yes.
Because we had a unfortunate event with one of our team members.
Yep.
Hurt herself pretty bad, broke her leg in 3 places, and that was a couple weeks ago, and so we've had to take a bit of a pause, but we are happy to get back and get going on this. And
happy that her recovery is
on well underway. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Megan, who's a pretty integral part of our team, had a pretty bad fall, and but I'm happy to say that everything is going, or else Jill and I wouldn't be able to be back doing this with the team. So, like Jill said, right from the onset, we're going to be talking about think different, get better. We're going to explore the different mindsets, self-discovery, and how we think differently, both men and women. Now, through other podcasts we've touched on these topics, whether it's been behavioral finance. We've also done things with Craig Bassinger. We did a few different ideas about how you think, how I think, and so I think this is a really good point to go. Where do you want to start?
I have a pop quiz to start.
So once again, Charm, is this one of those things she's got a lot more writing on her sheet than I have?
This is my own. Where does the slogan, think different, come from?
I know this, actually. Oh.
All right, so from 1997 to 2002,
banking.
That was Apple's slogan.
Oh.
And it led to their basically rebounding and gain in market share. And why is because it was unique in that it played on people's values and emotions versus on their product features, which is very much what we work in, right?
Yeah,
values and emotions.
That's right.
And biases.
You rarely shocked me, and that was actually a good one.
That's interesting.
That's a good one. I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, pop quiz. I didn't know that. Now I know. Think different. That was Apple's slogan. Good stuff. One of the first things that I think we were supposed to talk about today was building off again that Women and Men's podcast. In there, we kind of talked about different ways that women think and men think. I believe that I even had said that I actually agreed with the fact that women are far better at making decisions than men. And I mean, anybody can then slice and dice those types of statements. It's not to say that women are better than men or men are better than women. It's just there is an inherent ability to look at problem solving differently. It's been no secret. We've used it as our own discussion points with our clients about the importance of why we come together the way we do, and that's a really good place to build off. So why don't you lead with kind of some of the things that would be attributed to how you look at a problem, and then I can talk about how I would look at that problem as an example.
We could. That's a lot to do with more train of thought, but I would say my train of thought is very much in line with the way women think, which is very analytical,
Okay.
very strategic. The need for information
Yeah.
to make a decision. And I would just say the length of time it takes me to make a decision too.
Okay. I just go and make a decision. Or at least that's the appearance. I find that when I do look at a situation, depending on if I'm in a group of people that know me versus a group of people that don't know me, it could come across as though I am shooting up, from my hip. It makes it look like I am not well thought out. But the reality is that some of that is driven by the impulsive nature of sometimes wanting to get to a decision faster. And if there's anything that I feel like I would want to do better for my thinking is to not give the appearance that I don't think things through. With that said, the reality is I would tend to jump to a decision a lot faster than you would.
Well, but I think also, if I was going to comment on that, both of our ways are actually really beneficial, because you don't jump to a decision just purely on gut or just throwing a dart at a target. I think you base your decisions more so on a macro look and also based on your experience over a longer period of time, whereas I look at each decision from a micro standpoint, and I need to gather as much as much information for that one decision versus really pulling from experiences. And I would probably use a couple weeks ago as an example. As soon as the tariffs came out,
Yep.
You said we're buying the index, and everything was down. And had I really taken the time, we would have missed that trade. And
Yeah.
we literally put it in the day before the markets turned. And I think, yeah, it wasn't just a shot in the dark. It was an educated decision, but from a very different standpoint.
I like that. And I think, we can take this now and we can kind of move it forward. You kind of prompted something in me in thinking of, one of the most challenging components when it comes to finance is taking those two different mindsets and then having a constructive conversation with that family in order for them to both feel like they've been heard, that they could get their opinions expressed on what is maybe their values or their goals. Because even though we can use a broad statement like retirement is something that me and my spouse will agree on, is that something we want to do. How we get there, or how we are informed about how we get there, needs to be done almost in a very different way because of the thinking. And that's why we at least here have done so much work on trying to ensure that we can build what we call so many times a framework or the sandbox, so that at least there we know where we stand, but each individual that's involved in that, again, can feel heard.
Yeah.
So, what would be an example that you think would be helpful if we're going through a financial plan, if, a husband and a wife are sitting at the table and we're delivering, right? What do you think would be some things that would cater towards how, let's challenge it differently. How you think a male would want to receive the information, and I'll try to take a guess at what a female would want to see at the situation. I'm just thinking about this on the top of my head, so I know it's a bit
Okay.
off script.
So
we just delivered a financial plan. We've told them
Yes.
that they're going to be okay 10 years from now. But now you're the wife, I'm the husband, and now how do you want to be told
talk to.
to make sure that that's a reality?
Well, I don't know.
What's going to be important to you to hear?
I think he's going to be wanting to hear what return he's going to have to get every year, how much money he has to put away, what he's going to be investing in to get those returns, all of the detail.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's just going to be a very much A, B, C, D. I think if I were to gauge, or I had to be the individual to want to discuss, or I hate using this word, but sell to the spouse, I think the important parts will be, how are we going to do that? How much money do we need to save towards that goal? How is that going to impact my ability to, reach some of these individually targeted goals through the year? Are we going to be able to meet things like kids' education, paying down our mortgage, those types of things? And so, as you can see, very, very different, yet all coming together to make those. And the problem is that if you try to cater to just one way of doing things, you're going to lose half your audience or more than that. And more often than not, as we've found, men would like to believe that they're the decision makers, but they just may be the one to have the voice. The reality is that the female side of the equation is going to be the one that finalizes the decision. So I know that was a bit off topic, but I just wanted to kind of just gauge a little bit about what we try to do on a daily basis.
Can I comment on the Think Different, Get Better strategy in our world?
Please.
I would say the most obvious Think Different is taking a contrarian viewpoint to investing. So when, I read there's blood in the streets, or when there's excessive pessimism, when everybody's running out of the burning house, you have to have the gumption to run in.
Yep.
And that's really what I would say, that's the Think Different from the general market trend.
Yeah.
It's hard to do. The most famous contrarian investor, I would argue, out there is Warren Buffett. So if you want to wonder whether that contrarian approach or strategy works, I would argue it can, with calculated risk.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's being able to take a position that's dropping or dropped significantly, that clearly the market doesn't believe in, can sometimes really work in your benefit. And I think that what is important when you talk about the sandbox is that you are taking that contrarian view within a bigger strategy. So if you've picked good investments that you believe are going to fulfill your financial plan or take you to whatever financial goals you want, whether it's to build a stable income, to have a bigger return, whatever, then taking a contrarian view would be, when the markets drop, adding to those existing positions, and taking that as an opportunity.
I'll build off of that. And that's, again, a very good illustration that you just put out based on the comments you made a moment ago about, how do you look at things? Mm-hmm. And you use yourself as proxy for the female mind, right? You mm-hmm. said, I need to understand this, I need to understand that, and then from there I can make an informed decision. When we decided to build our Raise Group, brand, the way that we looked at the world, one of the key things was you were competing in a world that had various different abilities to access information, access products, access strategies, and on and on and on, right? You can go to the bank and the bank will provide you anything from a savings account pretty much up until you hit mutual funds. And once you get to that world, that's about the maximum limit. They may be able to discuss some insurance, but the world is very limited, and slowly they become stewards of trying to mold clients towards products that they can offer. And that's not a bad thing or a good thing, not common, it's just that's how it is. When you step to an insurance agent, there's an angle that always goes back towards mitigating or analyzing risk. But yet again, that is a very limited scope and a very, one lane of traffic. Then we have the old school, which is starting to die off, I would argue, but your direct broker, a broker that is going to just talk about investments from the bottom up and talk about why those things can achieve significant returns, of which then, financial planning isn't a really big part of it, but it's more about, are you winning, are you beating the market, are you beating an index, and it's very, very driven by, I would say, returns. And then what I would call is the all-encompassing, trying to cover all of those things, but driven by a plan, driven by an objective, driven by something. And so when I find that if you were to just talk to somebody and say, take a contrarian view to any one of those people, if they're working within the limited scope of whatever information they're given, it becomes very difficult, in my opinion, to make that decision. But if you're working within a team like ours, where you have constructed the sandbox, you have built a financial plan, you have worked out what the parameters are of that, you can then take a contrarian view with confidence because you've been informed.
Yes.
Right? And you can then feel that when Jill picks up the phone or John picks up the phone, it's not having to assess the risk of that decision, but rather it's building on the confidence of the relationship you built to know that we're calling because that's what's needed at that time.
Yeah, and I think we had the ability to identify that, besides individual positions dropping off here this month with the tariffs, it was really purely an event-based drop, right?
Yep.
Much like COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the times that you have to really
But
step
again, if
up.
you don't have a plan or you don't have
That's right.
a guiding hand that understands how that fits in,
Yeah.
you're really, to your point earlier, shooting a dart at a target. And, it can work sometimes. We're not here trying to create, enemies of people that do direct investing or have these individual approaches. We're just saying, if you're looking at things from a scope of trying to marry various different ways of thinking, various different biases, very different approaches, but you have one targeted goal, which is to try to reach some end objective, whether it's retirement, your first home, whatever it might be, thinking different is how you go about it. Because there's lots of people that will get you to think within their silo, or you can rise above it and try to figure out how to think different.
John, do you think thinking different is a individual decision at one moment in time, or do you have to make it a habit?
That's a great way of looking at it. If you're just positioning that, I think like anything.
So are you going?
Oh, I knew this was a loaded question.
Are you going to make it a habit of buying pens like that?
You know what? You had me. You sucked me in. You just saw my face. I was emotionally invested in that.
I'm just kidding.
I was emotionally invested in that.
Okay.
You just broke, that's...
It's not very often I've seen Simon completely lose it.
You had
But-
me. That was like when you did that thing to me on the flames. Like, you got me emotionally invested. And I'm like, I've got lots of good answers.
Okay, no,
I got
I
lots
am
of
asking
good things.
seriously. I am asking
No,
seriously.
I'm not answering.
Okay. All right. This has been a bearable conversation
Very
with
bearable.
Jillian and John at Reyes Group at IA Private Wealth. Thanks for joining us today.
As a young man, heard the sky's the limit. First thing first, I'ma break through the ceiling. One life jam, but it feels infinite. One life jam, then I better go.
This information has been prepared by John Reyes, Wealth Advisor, and Jillian Seguin, Associate Wealth Advisor for IA Private Wealth Incorporated, and does not necessarily reflect the opinion of IA Private Wealth. The information contained in this video comes from sources we believe reliable, but we cannot guarantee its accuracy or reliability. The opinions expressed are based on an analysis and interpretation dating from the date of publication and are subject to change without notice. Furthermore, they do not constitute an offer or solicitation to buy or sell any of the securities mentioned. The information contained herein may not apply to all types of investors. The wealth advisors can open accounts only in the provinces in which they are registered. IA Private Wealth Incorporated is a member of the Canadian Investor Protection Fund and the Canadian Investment Regulatory Organization. IA Private Wealth is a trademark and business name under which IA Private Wealth Incorporated operates.